أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. إن الحمد لله نستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا نصيرا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فإن أفضل الكلام كلام الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. Dear brothers and sisters, today I want to talk about an interesting concept which actually I'm borrowing from one of our scholars, Brother Nouman Ali Khan. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about him. Now, we see realities around us, whether that be social, economic, political, or even personal, but we don't look at them through an Islamic concept. We don't look at them through the book of Allah. We need to use the Quran as our glasses. If you don't see clearly and you put on your glasses, you will realize that all of a sudden you see things much clearer than what they are. Things might appear to be blurred. We need glasses, corrective glasses, to be able to see clearly. When we look around us today and what's happening in the world, what's happening economically, what's happening on a personal level, quite often things appear to be quite blurred. There are a lot of question marks. What's happening there? Why are Muslims backwards? Why are Muslims being killed? Why is all this happening? A lot of question marks. The vision appears to be quite hazy, but we need to put on our glasses to be able to see it clearly. So, just as an example, if we want to evaluate success and failure. So assume that you're driving in your car and you pass by a big house where a Ferrari is parked in front of it, big swimming pool. You will assume that the owner of this house must be quite successful. And then as you drive on, you find a homeless man sitting with all what he owns in a little bag. And you'll assume that this man must be a failure. However, if we look at things from Islamic context, from the context of Allah, from the context of the bigger picture, if you were driving past Pharaoh's castle, you would see a huge, beautiful castle, full of all luxuries. But was Pharaoh really successful? Where is he now? What's happening to him? What's expecting him? On the other hand, if we look at Sayyidina Ibrahim, the father of all the prophets, he was made homeless. So he was a homeless man. Was he a failure? We all know that indeed he is not. We know where he is now. We know what's expecting him. So it's important that as we look at life and as we look at what's happening around us, we need to put on these glasses to be able to see clearly. Now, I'm just going to take you through a little bit of history which we're all familiar about, just to highlight this point. Now, we all know that the Muslims had the Battle of Badr, where Muslims were successful, and then there was the Battle of Uhud, where Muslims were not very successful. Now, after these two battles, the kuffar decided it was time to get rid of Islam once and for all. So they gathered all the tribes from the peninsula and they headed towards Medina to get rid of Muslims, to kill them all. They were very strong. It was a huge army and they surrounded Medina from both sides. And more than that, even from within Medina itself, some of the Jews in there were allies to them and they decided that they were going to help in this attack. And we all know the story of what happened and how the Muslims just dug a trench around Medina, and this is what's all was standing between them and complete annihilation. The Quran describes this quite nicely in Surah Al-Ahzab, where it says, إِذْ جَاءُوكُم مِّن فَوْقِكُمْ وَمِنْ أَسْفَلَ مِنْكُمْ وَإِذْ زَاغَتِ الْأَبْصَارُ وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرَ. They've come from in front of you, from behind you, you were surrounded from everywhere, and even from under you, from inside Medina itself. And all of a sudden, the vision was very blurred. And the hearts were going up to the throats. People were so frightened. وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. And you started doubting whether Allah is actually going to be there to help us. هُنَالِكَ ابْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَزُلْزِلُوا زِلْزَالًا شَدِيدًا. This was a very big testing. This was a big testing to the believers. And they were shaken to the core. Now, we all know what happened after that. Allah sent winds. وَأَرْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ رِيحًا وَجُنُودًا لَمْ تَرَوْهَا. We sent the winds and we sent soldiers that you did not see. The winds were just blowing out all their tents and their fires, and all these huge armies had to go back. And the Muslims were victorious without even fighting. Now, 6 months later, after this happened, when the Muslims were about to be annihilated, defeated completely, the Prophet came out to the Muslims and said, I saw a dream, and the dreams of the prophets is a truth, that we are going to go and do Umrah. So the Muslims just followed. They walk down, they are in Ihram, they are unarmed, going towards Mecca, where 6 months before, armies were coming out to murder them, to kill them, and all of a sudden the Muslims are walking in Ihram, completely unarmed, going to their enemies, following exactly what the Prophet has asked them to do. They are listening to Allah and His Prophet. Now, they get there, and they stay in a place called Hudaybiyah, which we're all familiar with. And they send Uthman ibn Affan into Mecca to negotiate with the kuffar, to explain to them that they're not coming to fight, but they were coming to do Umrah, to allow them in. So what happens is the kuffar did not expect that. So what did they do? They arrested Uthman ibn Affan, and then the word spread out that he was killed. And the Muslims got quite agitated. And then the Prophet ﷺ took an oath from them that they were going to take revenge for Uthman's killing. It turned out to be that he was not murdered. However, the kuffar in Mecca were so frightened at the Muslims, although they were unarmed. So they came out and negotiated a sulh. They negotiated a treaty. Now the treaty apparently was very much in the favor of the kuffar. The treaty indicated that if any of the Muslims who live in Mecca wanted to immigrate to Medina, the Muslims would return them back to Mecca. And if any of the Muslims wanted to return to the kuffar would not return them. It indicated that for 10 years there would be no war. Nobody would, and if there was any war, it would break the treaty. It had many clauses in it, to the extent that when the Prophet wanted to write down, when Muhammad Rasulullah, this is between Muhammad, the Prophet of Allah, at that time Abu Sufyan, who was kafir at that time, said, we don't know that you are Rasulullah, otherwise we wouldn't be fighting you. So cross it out. And Ali ibn Abi Talib said, no, I would not cross it out. And he said, show me where it is and I will cross it out. So this is how apparent it was that it was really so unfair to the Muslims. However, it was signed. And then the Prophet said, fine, that's it. We're not doing Umrah. So you take off your ihram, shave your heads, and slaughter your hadi. And the Muslims who were so full of emotions. Now let's go through the emotions here. First of all, they had the emotions of fear when they were surrounded. Then they had the emotions of hope. Then they had the emotions of surrender. Then they had the emotions of rage. And all of a sudden he tells them, fine, okay, we came all the way. We walked all the way from Medina to Mecca. It's a long walk, by the way. They didn't travel by plane. They walked. And all of a sudden he tells them, fine, okay, that's it. It's off for this year. We come next year. And the Muslims who were there would not take off their ihram. They were about to disobey the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet went to his tent and he didn't really know what to do. And his wife, al-Mu'mineen, advised him. She said, you go in, take off your ihram, shave your head, and they will all follow. And this is exactly what's happened. Now, interestingly enough, under these circumstances, look at how we see it with our worldly vision, without our glasses on. The Quran was then revealed to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ at this instant. It says, "Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina." We have given you a great success, a great victory. Where was the victory? It wasn't a victory at all by worldly measures. It was a treaty which appeared to be against the Muslims. But Allah called it fathan mubina. And if we think about it, the Quran describes the change in the hearts of the Muslims and their submission to the will of Allah and the Prophet as fathan mubin. And this is a great fath. This was the beginning of real victory. Then we all know what followed after that. And it's all history, because after that the real fath came and the Muslims went into Mecca, and Mecca without even shedding, without a bloodshed or fighting or anything at all. So it was the beginning of the real victory. But in terms of people who were present at that time, they didn't see that clearly. So if we extend that to what's happening today, it's the same thing. Things might appear to be so gloomy, things which might appear to be unfair, things which might appear like a dead end. We need to put in our glasses, and if Allah helps us, we will be able to see it clearly. And then things will not look that dark. So, just to sum up very quickly, what I'm saying is that we need to read the Quran carefully. We need to be guided by the Quran. We need to be able to evaluate things within the bigger picture. It's not always easy, but if we seek help, Allah will help us. Just one last point of interest. If we think about what's happening to the Muslims in the present world, why are we so? What's happening to us today? It's mainly because we are completely lacking discipline. It's very interesting. I read a story about an American general who was asked, could you get 1 million people to line up properly? How long would it take you? And he said, people are not military trained. He said, it would take me probably at least 2 weeks. And they showed him the Kaaba where more than 1 million people were standing. And as soon as the adhan was said, and the Imam stood up and said, "I'tadilu," all of a sudden, Muslims were lined up in straight lines within a few minutes, which proves what discipline can do to us Muslims. Look at us here. As soon as we start the prayer, all of us stand in line. All of us are within a few seconds standing perfectly in line. Unfortunately, outside here, let's take ourselves as an example. Outside the mosque, we leave our shoes in the entrance. We block the entrance. We park in a bad way. We are not disciplined at all. And this is why we are backwards. We have the capacity, we have the ability to be disciplined. And we prove it every time we pray together, Salat al-Jama'ah. But unfortunately, we don't apply this to our normal lives, because we cannot see our normal lives as an extension of the mosque. Our life outside the mosque is an extension of the mosque. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Now, moving forward from this concept, now we established the concept that if we put on the glasses of Islam, the glasses of the Quran, we will see life clearly. A lot of people ask the question, and personally I get into a lot of arguments with people asking the questions. If Islam was right, and if the Muslims were right, why is it that Allah has chosen to make the West, that is largely atheists, the leaders? Why is the West leading the world today, and why are the Muslims in the back of the queue today? And again, it's because we don't understand our Quran properly. If we read the Quran, it says, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. We have written that the land will be inherited by the Salihun. And I'll come to the translation of the word Salihun in a minute. So, now the scholars have had two interpretations. One interpretation was that Al-Ard is referring to Al-Jannah, the hereafter. But another group of scholars said, no, we are talking about this life. Al-Ard is this land that we're living on. And Allah has made it a rule that this land will be controlled by As-Salihun. As-Salihun are those who do good. As-Salihun are those who do good to the earth and to themselves and behave in a good way. Now, if we look here, look at the Muslim world largely, or the supposed to be Muslim countries, compare it to the Western countries who are supposed to be atheists. Now, who has got freedom? Who is fair in their dealings? Who has charity? Who has the rule of law? Who is got justice? And let me tell you from personal experience, unfortunately, if you go to most of them supposed to be Muslim countries, they are lacking all of these things. Whereas in the West, they have all these things. And so the rule that Allah has set, He has made the land, given the land to those who are salihun, those who have got the right ways, those who are following the right ways. Allah says in Surah Hud, وَمَا كَانَ رَبُّكَ لِيُهْلِكَ الْقُرَى بِظُلْمٍ وَأَهْلُهَا مُصْلِحُونَ. Allah wouldn't have destroyed the people unfairly if the people in these countries were muslihun, were doing the right thing. Not salihun, muslihun. So, if we look at most of the Muslim countries, what are people doing? As I said, they're unfair, they're unjust. Generally speaking, they are untidy. Generally speaking, they don't even treat each other well. Generally speaking, they are unwelcoming. Although they have got the name Muslims, and even some of them might be actually mu'mins, because if we refer to the Quran again, the Quran says, وَقَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. The people, the Bedouins have said, we have got faith. قُلْ لَا تَقُولُوا آمَنَّا. Don't say you've got faith. بَلْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. Say we have become Muslims. وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلْ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Iman has not come into your heart. So yes, you are following the traditions. You are doing your prayers. You're supposed to be doing you fast in Ramadan. But that's all what you do. You are not real believers. You are not real Muslims as such. Although you're just touching the external bits of Islam. And that's why Allah's rule is applied now. So if you have a question, why are the Muslim countries behind? Because they are not really Muslim countries. They are just Muslim by name. Why is the West ahead? Because the West are muslihun. They are doing the right things. Although they might not be believers, they might not have the right belief, they might not be rewarded in the hereafter, but in this world they will be rewarded, and they are where they are because we are not where we should be. Now it's a long story, and there are many other examples which we might talk about in some other khutbahs, inshallah. But I hope that Allah will guide us, and hopefully the ummah will get out of its situation where it's being in a slump. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا برحمتك شر ما قضيت فإنك سبحانك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وأغننا بفضلك عمن سواك. اللهم ارحمنا بترك المعاصي أبدا ما أحييتنا وارحمنا بترك ما لا يعنينا وارزقنا حسن النظر فيما يرضيك عنا وألزم قلوبنا حفظ كتابك كما علمتنا. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وأدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروا الله يذكركم واستغفروه يغفر لكم وأقم الصلاة يرحمك الله.